And next we're going to talk about keeping the core clean, and there are props, I see. So, well, please, a warm welcome, everybody. Steffen, Pietsch, to talk about keeping the core clean. Over to you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. Hello again. Good to see you. So, yesterday I gave Paul a hard time because
that seems to be a common thing today.
I was faster than expected, but I promised, on average, I'm on time. So guess what will happen today? So I will speak about keeping the core clean. And I will start with, let's say, some basics to do some level setting. And I oftentimes get the question, hey, Steffen, can you explain me in very simple words what's the problem that you're addressing and how does this clean core principle work? And today I will therefore talk about clean core and the rope. So some of you know I'm coming out of Waldorf and I brought something very special with me. So this is an S4 system, or to be more precise, the S4HANA code line. Actually, none of your systems looks like this. Typically, you do the following. You have your custom code, and from that custom code, you access certain objects in your S4 system. So you read some data from a table. And after that, you call a function module in that system. And after that, you find this particular class that creates the sales order in a specific way. Very good. And I think you know where I'm heading to. At the end, your system looks a little bit like this. The problem is now, if you want to exchange the blue rope with a new blue rope, an updated one, it is pretty difficult because your custom code and the SAP code is intertwined. And here is where the clean core kicks in. It does not mean, which is a misconception, that you must not develop or that you must not customize. It is about the way how you do it. That you don't, let's say, use everything that you can see in the S4 system, but go through dedicated released objects and only use them to connect your custom code with the SAP code. And with that, you can still have your customizations, but decoupled from the SAP code. This is the essence of Clean Core, or the executive summary for today. But there is more, and I will go into the details in some boundary conditions here. So when we speak about Clean Core, let me define what I mean with Clean Core. It means an up-to-date, documented, unmodified, consistent, efficient, and cloud-compliant core. Important to note that the concept Clean Core is applicable in the private cloud. Why? Because in the public cloud, you have no way to access unreleased objects. You cannot simply access directly an internal table or an internal object. Nor can you modify the public cloud. But you have the freedom in the private cloud, and here is where the Clean Core is so relevant. And there are two sides of the coin. One is we are investing a lot in this blue rope. We are investing millions over millions to further develop and evolve the standard software. But to benefit from this, you have to be on the latest release. In the public cloud, this is a given. You're always on the latest release. In the private cloud, upgrades are customer-managed projects. So you have to take care of this. And if you are 5 years behind, you will not benefit from what we ship today, tomorrow, or the year after. So being up to date is key, and this is one of the aspects. The second one is the red rope. You want to be adaptable. Remember yesterday's session. You need to differentiate. There are competitive threats. There are business opportunities. And you want to benefit from that. So typically, you do this through customizations, through your custom code to find your niche and to differentiate. And this sounds like a contradiction. So to keep your system in an upgradable state, you need to standardize, while on the other hand side, you want to differentiate, and the clean core helps to overcome this contradiction. Now, how to keep the core clean? And let me quickly outline the bigger picture here. There are multiple dimensions when we speak about clean core. The first one is the business process dimension. If you're not willing to fit to standard to a certain degree, clean core may not be the right principle. Let me be that blunt. It does not mean that you have to have everything in pure standard only, but part of the concept is to fit to standard. The second, extensibility, to decouple the custom code from the SAP code. Third, data management. Fifth, integration domain. And sixth, operations. Today I will focus on the extensibility and share also some additional assets for the business process dimension. Now, when we speak about extensibility, the 3-tier extensibility model is the core concept. And let me take a minute to explain this. We have 2 stacks. One is the S4 system. The other one is BTP. And even though the concept is applicable in the private cloud, let me start with the public cloud for a good reason. So in your S4 system, you can build ABAP cloud code on stack. And you can use key user extensibility on stack, which is very, very powerful. So if you want to extend your business object, take a sales order, with a custom field, you don't need to copy everything, you don't need to replicate everything. You can use the key user capabilities on stack and do it in an upgrade stable way. And you can use the entire spectrum of side-by-side extensibility options. I presented yesterday SAP Build and the capabilities, what you can do with ABAP, what you can do with Java, JavaScript, the low-code tools, everything available on the BTP. So this is tier 1 extensibility in what we consider as clean core compliant. This is available in the public cloud, and it is in the same way available in the private cloud. So where's now the difference? In the private cloud, you have additional options. There is the so-called tier 2 and tier 3 layer. And let me start with a lower one, tier 3, which is the classic ABAP code. So everything that you developed in the past typically is ABAP classic. And if you are a brownfield customer, then you have a lot of tier 3 classic ABAP code in your system. And this is what we consider as not clean core compliant. Why? Because it may interfere with the SAP code. So you access a certain table, you use function modules, you use classes, etc. And it's not managed, it's not governed. And then there is this tier 2 enablement layer, which is more or less a wrapper which you can build if you want to from clean core compliant tier 1 ABAP code. If you want to access a certain object under the hood, which is not yet available via a released API, you can build this wrapper around it to govern it and to access it in a tier 1 compliant fashion. The code doesn't get better out of this, but you manage it and you govern it. So it's a pure enablement layer that you have in the private cloud. You don't have this in the public cloud. And this picture oftentimes leads to the question, okay, I understand now I can do it on stack and I can do it side by side, but when do I use which extendability option? And we give a certain guidance for this. On stack is recommended when you have a tightly coupled process. So you are, let's say, in your business process and you want to do a validation of some input data, etc. It does not make sense for that reason to bring everything first to the BTP to do some validation and then bring it back to the stack. You can do it on stack. Following clean core means following ABAP Cloud. Or if you want to extend an SAP standard application with the key user extensibility, so to add a custom field, to hide certain information, to rearrange the UI, etc. Third, if you have complex SQL statements that deal with a lot of data, again, only if you follow clean core here, so go through CDS views, but for that reason, it would not make sense to first copy all the tables to the BTP, do then some iterations, return the results. This would be pure overhead. So if you follow the access through CDS views and released APIs, you can do it on stack. Fourth, transactional consistency. Think of you want to maintain custom data in a custom table and update this data set when you update your material master. If that process fails, you want to have consistency with your custom table. This is transactional consistency. For these scenarios, as long as you follow ABAP Cloud, Clean Core, it's fair to say to do this on stack. And fifth, if you want to build a remote API, so to access from your BTP stack the S4 system, this API typically then sits on the S4 system. And then there are a couple of reasons when you should go to the BTP. The first one is whenever you have a loosely coupled application, which is more or less a self-contained application. It does not mean that it does not connect to your backend, but assume you build an application that lives in its own and then reads some data or writes some data back, but this application would belong to the BTP. If you think of a hub scenario, you build an application that connects with multiple systems, belongs to the BTP. If you are a partner and you want to build a multi-tenant SaaS application, it sits on the BTP. Same if you want to build and monetize your IP and ship it to the customer, the way to do it is to go via BTP and then deploy it to the customer's account. If you think of a mobile application you want to build, BTP brings everything to the table that you need. If you think of automating a process, you use the BTP. If you want to integrate as a customer your customers or your suppliers into a process, you typically don't want to have them access your S4 system directly from the outside. You do it via BTP and thereby shield your backend. think of elasticity. So if you don't want to size your entire environment for peak load, but if you want to have true scalability and elasticity, use the BTP for these scenarios. If you want to decouple the life cycle, so think of daily deployments or multiple times a day, you want to deploy a new application or update something. I don't know how often you do transport requests in your productive S4 environment, but typically you don't do it multiple times a day. So if you want to decouple it, it's a good reason to go to BTP. And in the end, ABAP developers are typically a very rare species. So if you also want to attract Java, JavaScript developers, a good reason to use BTP for that. Now back to the picture I showed here. I want to touch on 2 points. One is, if you are a brownfield customer, and you're now here on the left-hand side on stack, and you have your legacy code in your system, what can you do? The first thing is, and it's that simple, retire unused code. Typically, in every system, there is a large amount of unused code. Second, if you want to use your code in a clean core compliant way, you can either refactor on stack, or you can replatform and bring the code side by side. And if the code is not as intertwined as I showed it with the ropes, but is already more or less decoupled, does not really touch SAP objects, then it's absolutely fair to say that you just use this code as it is, and if there are changes, adapt it. So just refactoring for the sake of refactoring also does not make sense from a business perspective. And if we talk about decoupling, you need certain APIs. You need an overview of what is available, where can you access the S4 system in a cloud-compliant way. And there are, let me start with the upper one, Tier 1 APIs, which you can find on the Business Accelerator Hub. There are 2 types. One is if you think of on-stack APIs, where with your custom code you want to access certain objects in the S4 system, think of a CDS view, etc., which we consider also as an API. Plus, there are Tier 1 remote APIs, typically an OData API or a REST API that allows you accessing your S4 system from the BTP, or think of a Fiori application that accesses the stack. And we know that not each and every area is covered with these modern Tier 1 APIs. And this is why we released what you can see here, the nominated APIs, which is the next best option if there is no Tier 1 API available. These are typically so-called BAPIs, so RFC-enabled function modules, not all of them, but we reviewed all of them and selected those which we consider as fairly stable, where we see, hey, these haven't changed for the last 15 years. There are no plans to change it in future. It is not, let's say, a technical contract that we deliver here, but it is the next best option if there is no Tier 1 API available. And we make these nominated APIs also available or easy accessible from the BTP. What you can see here is a screenshot from the Business Application Studio as part of SAP Build Code, where in the Service Center you get a filtered list on all these nominated APIs, so not all RFC-enabled function modules, but the ones which we nominate. The same is available in SAP Build Process Automation, where you can also use these nominated APIs if you want to access the backend. Now, to summarize, if you are looking for APIs, number one source is the Business Accelerator Hub. The second one is, and I added here the two links, the cloudification repository, which contains all the nominated APIs, and there is a blog post which explains the concept. And if you don't find the API you are looking for, you can request an API, which is not a commitment that we will deliver everything, but is also for us a key source to understand where do you miss APIs, where do we see it's not just for a single customer, but for many of you important to have this API available. So I encourage you to make use of this opportunity to request APIs. Additionally, I would like to touch very briefly on some of the product innovations that help you to go along your clean core journey. And if you remember the entire build spectrum, I will focus now on the Pro Code part, which I explained yesterday already. Just last week, we released Joule in ABAP development tools. And if you haven't heard about that, I recommend having a read of this blog post, which explains it in detail. In essence, it allows you in the ABAP development tools, so in ADT, to generate cloud compliant and clean core compliant ABAP code right within the tool. It allows you to generate tests, unit tests for your coding. It helps you to explain existing code. So imagine the situation, you find some code you want to refactor, but it was not you, it was the colleague that left the company, and you now have to deal with that code. As an ABAP developer, for sure, you can read it and you can understand it, but if you want to get a first understanding, okay, what is it, what this code is doing, the explain functionality helps a lot to get a first insight into existing code. And finally, we now baked into the ABAP that you can use the generative AI hub right from the ABAP code and access it. So if you want to build intelligent ABAP application, it's now way easier to do it. So I recommend having a read of this blog. And what we are doing on the ABAP side, we are also doing in SAP build code, and we are also here further evolving the capabilities that you find in SAP build code, where already now you can generate with natural language statements the needed objects, a data model or a UI or application logic. You can generate test cases. You can generate sample data and a lot more, all in a cloud clean core compliant fashion on the BTP. And then we typically get the question, okay, I would like to understand where am I on my clean core journey? And we just released last month the Rise with SAP methodology dashboard. And let me quickly show and explain it in a short video. If you can roll the video, please. So what you can see here is Cloud ALM, and if you, can you play it? Please, yeah. If you select a system, you can, in the past we already had a dashboard, but there we only offered productive systems. Here you can now also choose test and development systems. You see, are you on the latest release? You see, are all the systems connected and all the data connectors and collectors enabled, and are they working properly? And in the extensibility domain, you see how many tier 1 ABAP cloud compliant objects do I have, how many tier 3 objects are candidates for becoming cloud compliant, and with the ABAP Classic also see a trend. Is it still increasing? You can jump to the further analytics, etc. So this is, if you are a RISE customer, it is already available for you. Just check it out. And then Clean Core is not just a pure technical topic about tooling, it's all around methodology. And we are bringing Clean Core and RISE closer together because RISE is your transformation journey. And RISE, and Anja is here if you have further questions, is a standardized framework that leverages, on the one hand side, the integrated tool chain, but also a lot of enablement and engagement with our partner ecosystem and also with SAP services. And RISE is a standardized framework with certain steps. And I don't go into all of these details, but what I want to outline is that we embedded quality gates in these steps. And in these quality gates, we also check certain Clean Core KPIs and your adherence to Clean Core and to your Clean Core success plan. And when I speak with customers about the RISE methodology and how Clean Core fits into this, I oftentimes get a lot of questions, and I sense that the embedded launch activities, EMLA, is not known to many customers. So if you are a RISE customer, this is part of your contract and you can use it. And the embedded launch activities cover one-on-one introduction to explain what are the RISE entitlements that you have, to explain you the SAP Activate methodology, your Clean Core success plan, how the quality gates work. So if you are a RISE customer, make use of what is part of your contract and reach out to the respective colleagues. When we speak about Clean Core and the Clean Core journey, there are typical certain phases that we see. One is, it starts with the basics. So you need to understand the Clean Core concepts. To then define your specific objectives. Again, it's not just refactor for the sake of refactoring, but what is really important for you, for your company, to meet your business goals. Then depending on the question, if you are a brownfield or a greenfield customer, your journey is different. As a brownfield customer, it typically starts with analyzing your existing code base, identifying the troublemakers, and define your, let's say, path to clean. As a greenfield customer, start right away with the Clean Core concept. There's no excuse. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. And this requires a certain governance to really adhere to the rules of Clean Core, to then build your extensions and to operate in that fashion. I collected here a lot of links and assets that map to these different phases. You get access to the slides where you can then use these links to get additional information. And let me point out 3 additional assets. One is the operations guide for S/4HANA and S/4HANA Private Cloud. It's a full-fledged document, but I want to point you to one specific chapter, 4.7, in which we explain how to set up the 3-tier extensibility model that I explained in a more or less automated fashion. So to set up all the ATC checks that you need, to bake it into your transport management, etc. So really recommend looking into this if you want to know how to set up the 3-tier extensibility model. And then to understand the concepts of Clean Core, we released 2 white papers, easy to read, around 20-30 pages. One is for the extensibility domain, which more or less explains what I wrapped up here in a more detailed fashion. And the other one was just released last week. It is about the business process domain, some guidance how to run a fit-to-standard approach, what tools are available there, explains again the methodology, also a super valuable asset. And with that, thank you, everyone. Thank you for your attention. I'm around if you have further questions.
Thank you so much, Steffen. That was super clear. So just to check, If I'm into tight coupling,
Yes.
I have to be careful or I might find myself tied up in knots. So it's just better to keep it clean.
Yes.
There you go. If I'm loose and I want lots of different options, I can turn to SAP BTP, and there are dashboards to make it easy for everybody to see what we're doing.
Yep.
Okay. All right, let's take a photo.
Thank you.
Should have had a deer.
I met the
Right,
deer
you
today
go.
again.
We'll get you in the middle. Is it the right way around? No, it is not.
Stretch break.
Okay, cheese.